Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Guys, start my computer. Welcome back to Fast U4, brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. Tour of Taranaki. Been there, done that. Second year. Came back yesterday. No, I didn't. I came back on Monday. And had a great time. Came away with the KOM jersey. Came away with the second place in the GC behind Brendan McGrath. And I came away with a whole lot of lessons about how to race a bike a little bit better. And I'll tell you what they are. We'll go through the stages. I'll go through why I think this is a good race, and some really important lessons I learned in this race. So hopefully that will help you in your planning. So if you're looking at the screen, that is a picture of stage 3 with me in my FitLab kit. I wasn't in the KOM jersey yet, and Brendan McGrath in the leader's jersey. This was the day Brendan and I broke away, got a lot of time, and was the key stage in the whole race. So let's have a look how the stages actually went down. So, Tour of Taranaki is a 5-stage stage race held in and around the mountain area of Taranaki and Queen's Birthday weekend every year. I'm glad they put it on this year because there's some discussion that it wouldn't go ahead, but it did, and it went ahead better than ever. It's always good numbers, a high level. I'm actually racing B grade because the level in A grade is super high. Lots of semi-pros riding in that level. I could probably hold my own, but it wouldn't be the same as being able to really do well in B grade. Might do A grade next year or something like that. See how we go. It contains usually roughly the same format, so you usually have an individual time trial as the first or second stage. Pretty short. And all other stages are road races between about 50 to 100 Ks. Most couple of 90 K stages, sort of a 70 something K stage, maybe a shorter 40 or 50 K stage. And so it was this year. So what I thought I'd do is just walk through what the stages were, just briefly, and anything I learned out of it, because I feel like this time around, because the conditions and courses and stuff are quite different, even the people you're racing, you get the opportunity to learn quite a lot. And maybe that's sort of like as an overarching kind of a thing I learned was, in training, I think it's really valuable, especially when you get to a certain stage of experience or ability, to go outside your envelope of comfort from time to time. And that could be racing people you're not that familiar with because you get used to people's tactics, but it could be just something as simple as rides or races that are very hard for some reason. So, and it doesn't have to be that often. It's sort of like, I feel like your cycling ability is kind of like it's kind of like you're in a big, your range is kind of like you're inside a big bag or something, and you push out the limits of the bag, and you push it and push it and push it. And every now and then, the area inside that bag is kind of like your ability, and you need to really push out hard on some area of the bag to make it bigger, to make your ability better. That's a little bit like what this tour was like for me. And you can do that in different ways. I've had riders who decide that they're really motivated to do a 300-kilometer training ride in a day. That was a big target for them, and they did it, and they were so buried at the end, they couldn't even ride the last couple of Ks home. But they ticked off 300 Ks and then that mental limit in your mind gets pushed out a little bit further. It could be 200, it could be 100. I've never done a training ride longer than 160 something Ks, so maybe for me this year I'll try to ride 200 in a day. It could be a power tag, it could be all sorts of things. And everyone's familiar with that idea of if you go into, when I was young, I qualified for the Oceania mountain bike champs and raced against a young Cadell Evans and various guys like that in Sydney. And it's amazing how there's like a magic effect of just racing guys that are on a different level. Some of it translates to you automatically if you're paying attention. Of course, there's reasons for it, but it's almost like you can just absorb it a little bit through osmosis. So some sort of overall thoughts. Okay, stage 1, individual time trial. Just a fast little circuit just near Okaya. And so averaging just under 42k an hour. Average power 357 watts for a normalized of 369 watts. Getting around there in 6.3k course, mostly flat. Some rollers, and I think the key to this probably was 2 things. I was second in this stage behind, his name was Darren Soljan, by about 10 or 20 seconds, so good for him. And I think I could have made better time, and probably the number 1 area was cornering, and it's a little bit easier said than done because these corners had a little bit of cow poo on them and were quite fast, so I wanted to be a little bit conservative. But if you add up, there's probably 6 or so decent cornering opportunities in this course. If I could have got a couple of seconds back on each of those, it would have been pretty much neck and neck. And it's all fine. I'm just saying, there's a lot of time to be had in TTs in cornering and in a turnaround, if there's a turnaround like an out and back course. And the only real way to probably address that is just to drill those turns, train on it the day before if you can, or beforehand. You always want to err on the side of safety, but you probably want to gouge as much time in those turns as you can, keep your speed up. Easier said than done, I know, so find a good line, find a safe line, keep your speed. That'd be what I'd say about stage 1. Power was good. Cadence was okay. It's hard to get into a really good rhythm in a short TT like that, but it wasn't bad. Sometimes you've just got to push really hard. You can't even look at your power that much. It was all pretty much as expected. So stage 2 was that afternoon. It was kind of like a flat course of 30 Ks or so, 3 laps with a little section of rollers where the KOM points were on this course, and I definitely learned something in this race. So what actually happened was, let's go over numbers. 2 hours 25 minutes, 92.4 Ks, climbing of 637 meters, average speed of 38k an hour. So an average power of 200 watts, but a normalized to 288. So very stochastic. If I roll down to the graph here, you can see there's a good reason for that. What played out was quite early in the race, Brendan McGrath, who was the strongest there in the race by far, went off the front, taking 2 riders with him, one of whom was Avery. I'll just go to the results here. Ronan Avery, a good young rider with Blind's Direct team, and another guy from the same team who couldn't hold on and broke. Brendan kept riding, taking a lot of points, sprint points and KOM points with Mr. Avery. And in the final lap, unfortunately, what did I say his first name was? Ronan Avery. Ronan snapped, came back to the bunch, and couldn't even hold on for the last couple of Ks because he was so broken. Kind of like a case of a big, strong, muscly, older rider like Brendan. Very strong, consistent power, eventually breaking down a younger, slimmer, guy who can climb really well, but is keeping him over, Brendan was keeping him over threshold a lot, just to hold his wheel probably. Eventually broke him down and he fell back. So Brendan of course won, but the bit that I got wildly wrong was I kind of wanted to target a sprint or KOM jersey in this race. I knew the leader's jersey was probably out of my reach because Brendan's on another level. But I completely got wrong where the first mountains points were. I had them written down on my stem, and I'd read it wrong. I thought that line was I don't know, it said something like 13 Ks, and I thought it was at 23 Ks. I couldn't see that it was I don't know, a 1 or a 2 or whatever it was. I got it wrong and barely even sprinted for the points, which was kind of a disaster. So straight away, I was out of it. That got me going to try a couple of counter-attacks. Didn't work, and from then on in the race, I really concentrated to know exactly where sprint and KOM points were. Took out some decent points, or a couple of points really, because I was only trying for third along the way. And I kind of, I've never thought of myself as a good sprinter, and I'm probably not against really good riders. But in this group I was okay, and I kept repeating something in my mind for both sprints, for the KOM points on the little hill. If KOM, if you don't know, that's King of the Mountains, which is a little bit of a grandiose term when you're talking about a little stage race in Taranaki, but you get the idea. There's the sprint preems, which are on a hill, and there's sprint ace, which is, flat. And that can be when you sort of cross the start-finish line, if you're doing multi-laps or at various places on the lap or at the finish. That's where you get sprint ace points. Okay, so for both of those, I had this little thing I kept repeating in my mind. The little thing is this: position and execute. Position and execute. Position and execute. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have the power. It doesn't mean that you're going to get it all right. It means that you're going to give it your best opportunity to do well, to get a couple of points for the sprints. So, position. If you're someone who is going to be going for these, you want to make sure that you first know where that line is. So you've got it written on your stem, you've got your computer, pretty much where on the road that line is going to be, so that you know about a kilometre before that at least. You need to be circulating in the right place in the bunch, usually front third, or marking any strong riders who are also going for the points, being on their wheel. And third is execute, which is, even though it's the bit where, so position is sort of the theoretical bit, execute is the bit where it hurts. And coming into those lines for the last 30 seconds is very painful. You're anaerobic and it hurts. Guys will be backing off, guys will be shifting around. Keep positioning, keep executing, and execute, and then sprint, do your job. Now, that went pretty well for me, and I picked up a few points. So I would say that probably that theory applies to a lot in road racing, not just breaking up sprint teams. And I've been talking to a lot of my riders. Let's have a drink there. A lot of my riders this time of year, we're talking through tactical weakness. And the theme that comes through more than any other is positioning. Now, it's much easier said than done, of course. But when I look at power data, you can see guys who do much better can often use a lot less power because they're positioned. Yes, that might mean that you have to really sort of know what you're there to do. Number one, are you there to sprint? Are you there to do, what are your tactics in that race? Know what that is first, so then you have some sort of methodology by which to determine if you're successful or not. And then positioning, well, it can be hard because it could be windy. It could be hard because the guys are aggressive. And in all of this, I would just say, you kind of know what to do. Just practice doing it, and it will get better and better. And that's all you can do. And ignore that thing I talked about last time, which is that imposter syndrome. So as long as you are staying safe, and as long as you are not clearly weak and clearly being a hazard or something like that, you have as much right to be there as anyone else. And you should use your ability to the best of your ability on the road and hold position or do whatever you need to do within the rules, within the spirit, within safety and all that. I don't want to see people sticking their elbows out and pushing. I don't want to see people being jerks and not pulling through when really it'll be fine. None of that. But know where you're supposed to be. And I kind of realize that in saying this, all of that is sort of wildly obvious. And it's wildly obvious when you're sitting like I am on my turbo trainer in the kitchen. It's not so wildly obvious when it's windy and it's raining. You know, it's halfway through a race and you're supposed to be concentrating and you've got some cow shit in your teeth. And yeah, I get all that. That's why, you know, I always have that thing written down, which is do your job, which means it's the same as if you work in an office or anything. You have a job to do, you just go and do it. You don't stand there complaining about it or anything. You have a job to do, go and do it. So back to stage 2. Brendan ended up getting a giant 4 or 5 minute lead on me and everyone else. Good for him. Stage 3, this was the biggie for me. 1 hours 54, 72 Ks, 600 meters of climbing, 3 major climbs, sort of 4 in there that were quite strong. And the overall what happened is that there was some discussions and I broke away. Exactly the same on this course as I did last year. Had a lot of attempts, finally broke clear with Ronan Avery. Brendan McGrath crossed over. He may have brought Ronan with him actually, which was fine. The 3 of us worked very nicely for most of it. You can't really tell on the data here, but we had a very nice group of 3 strong riders going fast. What do we average? 37.8 Ks on a pretty hilly course. Average power of 280, effective power of 318 watts, so quite strong, especially for the 3rd stage in a stage race like this. So here is the big part that happened about 3/4 of the way through, around here, just after one of the climbs. It was Brendan and me who were kind of the older, muscly kind of time trialist types versus Ronan again, young, lean, good climber. We decided that it would be in our benefit to put the hurt on the young man in the gutter, 500 watts in the gutter for a couple of minutes, shake him loose after his turn. We did that, and he did so well, but we did snap him. He went most of the way back to the bunch. Brendan and I rode really well together, with Brendan taking a fine victory over me in the sprint. Ronan coming in a couple of minutes later, and the bunch a couple of minutes later. That gave Brendan McGrath the lead by probably about 7 minutes at that stage. Put me in second in GC with a few mountain points along the way. Followed by, at about 4 minutes, followed by Ronan at about 2 minutes, followed by the bunch about another 1 or 2 minutes. So really consolidated the GC. Stage 4 that afternoon in the rain. Oh, by the way, just back to what I learned. In stage 3, there's kind of this thing happened where we're going over those climbs, and you know, these days I've changed a little bit my tactics and my physiology, and it can be hard for me to respond to very strong accelerations on climbs. And I just had another thought in my mind I repeated. It's funny, you get songs stuck in your head in races. You get little sayings stuck in your head in races. You get Steve's Rule 10 stuck in your head during races. So this one I got stuck in my head, which was what I wrote it down. I said, hold on no matter what. No matter what. So on the climbs, sometimes I was on the limit. We're doing 400 to 450 watts up these climbs at 2 to 3 minutes, which is very strong for me. Around bordering on 6 watts per kilo. And so the thing I repeated was, hold the wheel no matter what. So obviously that doesn't stop you from cracking, because you have physiological limits, but it does take one part out of the equation. There's 2 parts in cracking. One part's physiological, second part is mental. Take the mental part out of the equation. The mental part where you doubt yourself, the mental part where you want to conserve, the mental part where all of that. If you're in a position where staying on is probably the making of the race, well, what you do is you get your whiteboard in your brain, stick a big red line through mental, and you go, that's not part of the equation for me for this next 3 minutes. It's only physical. So you might crack, but if you come off the wheel, it's because your body gave in. You couldn't do it anymore, not because you were having second thoughts. That's what I came away with out of that stage. Hold on, no matter what. Yeah, I was on the limit on some of those climbs. I held on no matter what. Turns out my body could do it, even if maybe my brain wouldn't. And it worked out pretty good. Stage 4. This is a shorter stage in the rain in the afternoon. 1 hour 21, 48.7 kilometers an hour, 35.8 kilometer an hour average. No power data for this one because, unfortunately, my power meter gave up in the rain near the end of stage 3, which is kind of a bummer. But what happened? Well, short, kind of lumpy route. The topographical profile in the graph doesn't really say much, but I was kind of had this idea that I wanted to try to pick up any preems, stay in the bunch, sort of consolidate. It's about consolidating. It's the way it kind of worked out. One thing I would say that I sort of learned on this one is before the race, I had gone ahead and cleaned my bike with degreaser and all that to make sure that it was running really nice, because it gets grit and stuff on which can derail your chain, dry it out, all that in the rain. And so my bike was working pretty good, thanks to Biomaxa. But, you know, you're coming up some of these first climbs and there was a lot of guys who were looking down and they're grinding and derailing their chain and weaving and all over the shop. And when you're on the limit, you're pushing 5 watts per kilo for 5 minutes early in the race in the rain. That puts you off so bad. You do not need it. So as much of a pain in the ass as it can be to get back to your room and when you really want to lie down and check your Facebook feed, you should get out there with some soapy water, your Biomaxa degreaser. You should clean that, dry it out, re-lube, because it really, you know, it could make a world of difference to you. You know, we've all been there and it sucks. Don't let it happen to you. The other thing is probably I learned about this stage is just err on the side of being warm. You know, it was so cold. You can always kind of unzip your jersey a bit and cool down a bit that way if you have to. But it was so cold, it really can affect your performance. So here's the move I like to do. I like to get one of those Castelli Gabba jackets. So I had regular jersey, Castelli Gabba, that's the one you want. The new long sleeve ones are called the Perfetto. Get one of those. This is the, it's kind of generally agreed that the Castelli Gabba is if there's no garment you could wear, no other garment you could wear in the world, you'd have that because it's flexible and breathable and light and really warm and dry. They are amazing, and pros wear them in contradiction of their pro contracts and things like that because they are so good. So I have this long sleeve black Gabba jacket, Gabba if you're not sure, and the new one is Perfetto, Perfetto. I guess it's just another name for a long sleeved Gabba jacket and neoprene. I don't have any relationship or agreement or anything with Castelli, but I know they're the best. And then you put on top of that Gabba jacket your jersey or a wind vest or something like that. That is the hot ticket for wet weather. So last stage, stage 5, Queen's birthday. This was wildly difficult. So a 30k or so circuit around the mountain, near the mountain, on the western side of the mountain, 2 hours 21, average speed of 38.1 kilometers an hour, and we were hauling, man. The northern end of this course, we were hauling at an average. I mean, if I just have a look here, in the last lap, down the northern western side there, averaging 46, sometimes 50, even up to 60k an hour. One of those weird situations where sometimes you actually do spin out like a 50-11 or 52-11. Story of the race was really that it all stayed together. It was like a good B grade because it wasn't brittle. A deep grade with good ability. Sometimes when you attack a B grade, they can, get brittle, lose wheels, but not these guys. They really keep going. The KOM points were on the southern end of the circuit, just after the turn. 3 KOM points. That was super important for me because I was tied with Brendan McGrath for mountain points. So, what did I learn? Again, it sort of comes back to that organise. So, sit there with the race booklet, know exactly where the KOM points are going to be, write it down, and really commit it to memory. When you're coming up to them, what are we going to do? We're going to position and execute. Take away the mental part of it. I won a good amount of points and consolidated the KOM jersey. The big play of the day was a young man going away by himself in the first lap and staying away with a fabulous ride. See his name here, Isaac Burton. I don't know anything about Isaac Burton, but what I do know about him is that he broke away with another guy who snapped and came back to the bunch in the third lap, and kept somewhere between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes on the bunch the whole time. We weren't really honking all the time, but we were not messing around. That was a fabulous ride and a great stage win for Mr. Burton. Back in the bunch, after I had consolidated KOM points pretty good, and the sprint points were, so the sprint points pretty contested skill, which Brendan McGrath took out the sprint jersey. There was a number of attacks after the KOM which went on and on and on. Very high heart rates for late in the race. You can see here, if you're looking at the screen, for about 20 minutes or so, attack after attack after attack. Partly so that, a lot by Ronan Avery, because he probably wanted to get the sprint jersey off Brendan. That wasn't going to happen. Sometimes by Brendan, just wanting to strongly move off the front. A lot of me covering, and it just went on and on, holding an average heart rate there of 147 for best part of 20 minutes. Repeated attacks. And again, I sort of felt like, you know what, you just do your job. Your job is to cover these attacks. So just go and do it. Don't discuss it in your mind. Don't have second thoughts about it. Don't doubt yourself. put a red mark through the mental and put a tick next to the physical. If your body gives out, so be it. But it was warfare. There was a large, messy sprint coming down to the final sprint, taken by someone, maybe Phil Marfell, I think. All right, so let's look at how the final GC Tour of Taranaki came down. We had Brendan McGrath. We had 306 kilometres and an average speed of 38 kilometres an hour. Good, fast, strong tour. Brendan McGrath winning. Time of 8 minutes and 8:02:58. 8 hours, 2 minutes, 58 seconds. Me, about 7 minutes later. So that's huge. Ronan Avery taking a really gutsy third about 3 minutes later. Daryl Soljan, the winner of the TT, coming in fourth I should say, about a minute later. Ho Buke, who came up with us from Wellington, only 22 seconds down on Daryl. So a good GC turnout for me. And for our Wellington riders, here's the KOM points that they shook out. Me taking the KOM GC with 15 points over Brendan McGrath on 12 and Ronan Avery on 7. Up until the last stage, it was kind of a finely poised thing between me, Ronan and Brendan. So I was pleased to have that one. That is how it went. So thank you to the Taranaki for putting on such a good race. Thank you for good prizes from 100% and the Taranaki guys putting it all together. It's a good race. If you haven't done it, I'd really recommend it. Good varied courses. It's like, it sounds weird, but varied weather. It can be warm, can be cold. You sort of get a bit of everything. Good fields, not brittle, and good lot of, there's lots of preems on the road to pick up. So that's what I'd say. So next race, I don't know. There's going to be the Kapiti Winter Series coming up in the next few weeks. Go to the Kapiti Club website to have a look at that. That's probably the next thing I'll come along to. There's some serious winter training in between now and then. And on that subject, if you would like a training plan from me, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or go to fitlab.co.nz. As always, this is brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. I'll see you on the weekend.